A Shady Plot. So I sat down to write a ghost story. Jenkins was responsible. Hallock, he had said to me, give us another of the supernatural this time. Something to give them the horrors. That's what the public wants. And your ghosts are life propositions. Well, I was in no position to contradict Jenkins, for as such, his magazine had been the only one to print my stuff. So I had said, precisely, in the deepest voice I was capable of, and had gone out. Here, I refers to John Hallock, the narrator of the story. He introduces himself as a writer who writes ghost stories for Jenkins' owner of a magazine. He wanted John Hallock to write a ghost story which is super scary because the reader likes to read such scary stories. And he says that the ghosts in John Hallock's stories are very close to real ghosts, and his ghost stories are sold out easily and fastly. That is, his stories are hot seller. Even though Hallock was not in a mood to write yet another ghost story, he could not refuse Jenkins' demand, as he is the only one who publishes his stories. Here, stuff means stories. So he accepted his demand in a deep voice, which indicates his reluctance to write yet another ghost story. Life propositions means suggest or indicate a real life occurrence. Contradict means deny the truth of a statement by asserting the opposite, or dispute, argue. These are the meanings of contradict. Precisely means exactly, used as a reply to confirm or agree with a previous statement. I hadn't the shade of an idea, but at the time that didn't worry me in the least. You see, I had often been like that before, and in the end, things had always come my way. I didn't in the least know how or why. It had all been rather mysterious. You understand, I didn't specialize in ghost stories, but more or less they seemed to specialize in me. A ghost story had been the first fiction I had written. Curious how that idea for a plot had come to me out of nowhere after I had chased inspiration in vain for months. Even now, whenever Jenkins wanted a ghost, he called on me, and I had never found it healthy to contradict Jenkins. Jenkins always seemed to have an uncanny knowledge as to when the landlord or the grocer was pestering me, and he'd done me for a ghost. And somehow, I'd always been able to dig one up for him, so I would begin to get a bit cocky as to my ability. Actually, John had no idea or plan on another story, but when Jenkins set him to write one, he was not worried about it. Because whenever Jenkins asked him to write a ghost story, he was like this before, out of idea, but at the end, all of a sudden, a story would come into his mind out of nowhere, as the story specialized in him. It was a ghost story that he wrote at first in his career. Even now, Hallock had no idea as to how all of a sudden a ghost story would come up in his mind. It is also strange that Jenkins always pressurized him to write a story when he was in need of money, as his landlord or grocer troubling him to pay the bills. So he didn't find it suitable to say no to Jenkins. And somehow he was always successful in writing a story. So he had started feeling overconfident about his writing abilities. There are some difficult words. Shade of an idea. Slightest clue or idea. Mysterious. Strange. Chased means ran after. In vain, unsuccessful. Here, healthy means suitable or favorable. Uncanny, strange, pestering, troubling. Dig one up means to find something. Cocky means overconfident. So I went home and sat down before my desk and sucked at the end of my pencil and waited, but nothing happened. Pretty soon my mind began to wander off on other things. decidedly unghostly, and material things such as my wife's shopping and how on earth I was going to cure her of her alarming tendency to take every new fad that came along and work it to death. But I realized that would never get me any place, so I went back to staring at the ceiling. So once again, without any interest, John sat down to write a ghost story. He sucked at the end of his pencil and waited, but none did. His mind moved away from writing story to his wife's craze for shopping. He wanted her to get rid of the habit of taking up any new fashion and continuing it till she got bored of it or till another new fashion came up. Then he realized that he could do nothing to stop her and resumed his thoughts for an idea to write the story. Here, wander off means move away slowly. Material things refers to living things. Actually, he is going to write about ghosts and he must think about ghosts. But his thoughts move away to material things, refers to living things. Okay. Fad means fashion or trend. Work it to death. To use till it gets finished due to overuse. Staring means look fixedly or intently. Ceiling, the upper interior surface of the roof. Next, paragraph number 7 to paragraph number 9. This writing business is delightful, isn't it? I said sarcastically at last, out loud too. You see, I had reached the stage of imbecility when I was talking to myself. Yes, said a voice at the other end of the room. I should say it is. I admit, I jumped, then I looked around. Here, John was so irritated at the lack of ideas that he lost his mind and started talking to himself quite loudly. He also felt that he was like a fool when he was talking to himself. Suddenly he got a reply as there was no one in the room. He was shocked and jumped up frightened and looked around to see the person. So here, I should say it is. Here the I is not John Hallock, it is someone else. Okay. Sarcastically means someone or something that mocks the other. Imbecility, foolishness or lack of intelligence. Next, paragraph 10. It was twilight by this time and I had forgotten to turn on the lamp. The other end of the room was full of shadows and furniture. I sat staring at it and presently noticed something just taking shape. It was exactly like watching one of these moving picture cartoons being put together. First an arm came out, sleeve of a stiff white shirt waist, then a leg and a plaid skirt, until at last there she was complete, whoever she was. It was dusk and Hallock had forgotten to turn on the lamp. The room was dark and the other end of the room was darker, and amidst the furniture there emerged a shape in parts. Hallock describes the appearance of the shape. First an arm appeared, gradually the sleeves became visible, and so on. Finally, the complete form of a woman appeared before him. She was a stranger to him. Here, plaid skirt means a long piece of cloth. Shirt waist, a woman's blouse shaped like a man's shirt. Paragraph 11. She was long and angular with enormous fishy eyes behind big bone-rimmed spectacles and her hair in a tight wad at the back of her head. Yes, I seemed able to see right through her head. And a jaw, well, it looked so solid that for the moment I began to doubt my very own senses and believe she was real after all. So here, John Hallock describes the physical appearance of the woman. He describes the woman as being tall and having an angular body. She had huge questioning eyes. She wore big spectacles in the shape of bone. His hair was tightly in a roll. Her head was transparent and he could see through it. Her jaw was so solid that he believed there was a person standing in front of him. Here the word angular means sharp corners. Enormous means huge. What? Rolled up. Paragraph 12 to paragraph 13. She came over and stood in front of me and glared, yes, positively glared down at me, although to my knowledge I had never laid eyes on the woman before, to say nothing of giving her cause to look at me like that. I sat still, feeling pretty helpless, I can tell you, and at last she barked, "What are you gaping at?" That woman stood in front of John Hallock and stared at him angrily. But Hallock did not know the reason for her angry stare, as he was meeting this woman for the first time. Hallock could not believe his eyes and could not react. He just stared at the woman with his mouth wide open. Then the woman shouted at him. Glare means stare in an angry or fierce manner. Barked means shouted. Gaping, staring with the mouth wide open. Paragraph 14 to paragraph 15. I swallowed though I hadn't been chewing anything. Nothing, I said. Absolutely nothing, my dear lady. I was merely waiting for you to tell me why you had come. And excuse me, but do you always come in sections like this? I should think your parts might get mixed up sometimes. I swallowed though I hadn't been chewing anything. This shows that John was very nervous. He was not able to breathe comfortably and so gulped the saliva which had collected in his mouth. John was in a confused state and nervously asked her whether she was always appearing sections and wondered if her body parts would get mixed up with each other. Here, sections means parts. Parts means body parts. Paragraph 16 to paragraph 19. Didn't you send for me? She crisped. Imagine how I felt at that. Why? No, I don't seem to remember. Look here, haven't you been calling on heaven and earth all afternoon to help you write a story? Then the woman again shouted and asked him whether he was not calling her for help. John was surprised to hear that. He did not remember when he had called her for help. Then the woman asked him if he was not calling on heaven and earth all afternoon for an idea to write a story. Crisped means spoke angrily. Calling on heaven and earth means praying. He was praying to get an idea for a story. Next, paragraph 20. I nodded, and then a possible explanation occurred to me and my spine got cold. Suppose this was the ghost of a stenographer applying for a job. I had an advertisement in the paper recently. I opened my mouth to explain that the position was filled and permanently, but she stopped me. Then Hallock moved his head as to agree. Suddenly he remembered something and got scared. Recently, Hallock had given an ad in a newspaper for a stenographer. He thought that this was the ghost of a stenographer applying for the job. He was about to say that the position was filled permanently, but the ghost stopped him to say that. Here, spine got cold means frightened.